Welcome to an interview in history. Imagine a podcast that serves as a bridge across time, connecting listeners to the voices of history's most impactful figures. Each episode is a deep dive into the lives and legacies of these individuals, exploring not just their well-documented achievements, but also uncovering lesser-known facts that shaped their contributions to our world. From scientists who unlocked the mysteries of the universe to activists who fought for social change, each story is a testament to the indelible mark they left on society. This journey through history will not only educate, but also inspire listeners to appreciate the intricate tapestry of human progress. This week on An Interview in History, we're talking with Henry McCarty, alias William H. Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid. He was an American outlaw and gunfighter of the Old West who was linked to 9 murders, 4 of which he was solely responsible, and 5 in which he may have played a role alongside others. He's also noted for his involvement in New Mexico's Lincoln County War. Today, we have an extraordinary opportunity to speak with none other than the infamous Billy the Kid. Billy, thanks for joining us. Let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us about your early childhood?
Well, I was born Henry McCarty in New York City in 1859. My ma, Catherine McCarty, was a strong woman. After my pa passed, or ran off, not sure which, she took my younger brother, Joe, and me out west. Ma took us to Indianapolis, Indiana, where she met William Henry Harrison Antrim. Ma took the family and moved with Antrim to Wichita, Kansas. After moving again a few years later, Ma married Antrim on March 1st, 1873, at the First Presbyterian Church in Santa Fe, New Mexico Territory, and us boys served as witnesses. Shortly afterwards, we all moved from Santa Fe to Silver City, New Mexico, and my brother Joseph adopted Antrim's surname. Ma ran a laundry business and did whatever she could to keep us fed. Shortly before Ma died of tuberculosis, William Antrim abandoned us, leaving us orphans.
What was your relationship like with your mother?
My ma was everything to me. She was a hard worker and had a good heart. She married William Antrim hoping for some stability, but he wasn't much of a father to me or Joe. After she died, I was left to fend for myself. I was just a kid, maybe 15, but I had to survive.
Did you ever see William Antrim again?
Well, I did locate him and stayed with him until Antrim threw me out. I stole clothing and guns from him. It was the last time we saw each other.
Billy, what happened to your brother Joe?
As I said, after Ma died, Joe and I were on our own. He was younger than me, born around 1863 in New York City. We drifted apart over time. Joe ended up in places like Trinidad, Colorado, and Las Vegas, New Mexico, making a living as a gambler. He kept a low profile, never got mixed up in the kind of trouble I did.
Did you get any kind of formal education?
Yeah, I did actually. I went to school in Silver City for a while, and folks said I was a smart kid. I could read and write pretty well, and I loved stories. But after Ma passed, school didn't seem so important anymore. Survival did.
Well then, when did you start getting into trouble?
The first time I got arrested was for something small, stealing food. 10 days later, I robbed a Chinese laundry and was arrested again, but escaped shortly afterwards. The sheriff, Harvey Whitehill, thought it was more of a prank than a real crime, but I wasn't about to sit in jail. I busted out and hit the road. From there, things got serious real fast. I ran with some rough crowds, and before long I got mixed up in horse thieving and cattle rustling. That led me into the Lincoln County War, and, well, you probably know the rest. Speaking of the Lincoln County War, can you explain how you got involved? Lincoln County was a powder keg waiting to explode. There were two rival factions, the Murphy-Dolan group and the Tunstall-McSween side. John Tunstall took me in and treated me like family. When Dolan's men murdered him, I wasn't about to let that slide. I joined up with the regulators and fought back. It turned into a full-scale war, and after the 5-day battle in Lincoln, I became a wanted man. So, you were born Henry McCarty. When did you change your name? Well, at some point in 1877, I began to refer to myself by the name William H. Bonney. I was at a saloon in the village of Bonita when I got into an argument with Francis P. Windy Cahill, a blacksmith who had bullied me, and on more than one occasion called me a pimp. I, in turn, called Cahill a son of a bitch. Whereupon Cahill threw me to the floor and we struggled for my revolver. I shot and wounded Cahill. I had no choice. I had to use my equalizer. Cahill died the following day. I fled, but returned a few days later and was apprehended by Miles Wood, the local justice of the peace. I was detained and held in the Camp Grant guardhouse, but escaped before law enforcement could arrive. And then where did Billy the Kid name come from? Well, that name, you see, came from the Santa Fe Weekly New Mexican, and they reported me as Billy Bonney, more extensively known as the Kid, who shot and killed Joe Grant. You see, I'd been warned Grant intended to kill me, so I walked up to Grant, told him I admired his revolver, and asked him if I could examine it. Grant handed it over. Before returning the pistol, which I noticed contained only 3 cartridges, I positioned the cylinder so the next hammerfall would land on an empty chamber. Grant suddenly pointed his pistol at my face and pulled the trigger. When it failed to fire, I drew my own weapon and shot Grant in the head. Man, did you ever try to go straight, leave the outlaw life behind? I tried a few times. Governor Lew Wallace even offered me a deal. Testify against the real criminals and I'd walk free. I did my part, but they double-crossed me, left me sitting in jail. So I broke out. What else was I supposed to do? By then, the law had me pegged as a killer, and there was no going back. Billy, let's talk about Pat Garrett. Was he a friend or a foe? Pat Garrett? That's a complicated one. We knew each other back in Fort Sumner. Played cards, shared drinks. Some folks called us friends, but I wouldn't say we were close. When he became sheriff, he chose the law's side, and I was on the other. So friend or foe? Maybe a bit of both. So, Billy, was Pat Garrett out to get you? Once Pat took up the badge, his job was to bring me in, whether it was for the reward money or to make a name for himself. He was on my trail. I reckon he was out to get me, but that's the way of the West. Did you have any close friends or love interests? I had friends. Sure, guys like Tom O'Folliard and Charlie Baudry. We rode together, fought together. As for love, there were a few senoritas in my life. Some say I was sweet on a girl named Paulita Maxwell, but you know how stories get stretched. Let's just say I wasn't lonely. Looking back,
Do you regret anything?
Regret? Maybe. I didn't set out to be an outlaw. Life pushed me in that direction. I did what I had to do. But if things had gone different, maybe if Ma had lived longer, maybe if the law had given me a fair shake, who knows? But what's done is done.
And finally, Billy, do you think your legend will outlive you?
Well, looks like it already has, don't it? Folks love a good story, and I guess I gave them one. Whether I was a hero or a villain, I'll let history decide.
Thank you, Billy. It's been fascinating talking with you.
Anytime. Just don't let Pat Garrett hear about this meeting, all right?
Bonnie's notoriety grew in December 1880 when the Las Vegas Gazette in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and the Sun in New York City carried stories about his crimes. Sheriff Pat Garrett captured Bonnie later that month. In April 1881, Bonnie was tried for and convicted of Brady's murder and was sentenced to hang in May of that year. He escaped from jail on April 28th, killing 2 sheriff's deputies in the process, and evaded capture for more than 2 months. Garrett shot and killed Bonnie, by then age 21, in Fort Sumner on July 14, 1881. During the decades following his death, legends grew that Bonnie had survived, and a number of men claimed to be him. Billy the Kid remains one of the most notorious figures from the era, whose life and likeness have been frequently dramatized in Western popular culture. He's been a feature of more than 50 movies and several television series. And now, another forgotten history. Over time, legends grew claiming that Bonnie was not killed, and that Garrett staged the incident and death out of friendship so that Bonnie could evade the law. During the next 50 years, a number of men claimed they were Billy the Kid. Most of these claims were easily disproven, but 2 have remained topics of discussion and debate. In 1948, a Central Texas man, Ollie P. Roberts, also known as Brushy Bill Roberts, began claiming he was Billy the Kid and went before the New Mexico Governor Thomas J. Mabry seeking a pardon. Mabry dismissed Roberts' claims, and Roberts died shortly afterwards. Nevertheless, Hico, Texas, Roberts' town of residence, capitalized on his claim by opening a Billy the Kid museum. John Miller, an Arizona man, also claimed he was Bonnie. This was unsupported by his family until 1938, sometime after his death. Miller's body was buried in the state-owned Arizona Pioneers Home Cemetery in Prescott, Arizona. In May of 2005, Miller's teeth and bones were exhumed and examined, without permission from the state. DNA samples from the remains were sent to a laboratory in Dallas and tested to compare Miller's DNA with blood samples obtained from floorboards in the old Lincoln County Courthouse and a bench where Bonnie's body allegedly was placed after he was shot. According to a July 2015 article in the Washington Post, the lab results were useless. Join us next week when we talk with John Muir, also known as John of the Mountains, who was an early advocate for the preservation of wilderness in the United States. Until then, take care.